Exposed. Black CEO discovers cashier in tears. What happens next is an amazing transformation. Marcus, the 32-year-old CEO of an innovative tech startup in Detroit, stepped into the local grocery store seeking a brief escape from the unyielding pressure of corporate expectations. It was in this slice of normalcy that he found solace, until he spotted Sarah, a middle-aged cashier, tears streaming down her cheeks as she wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her faded uniform. The cloud of despair enveloping her was palpable. Curiosity pulled him closer, despite the ticking clock at the back of his mind, burdened by looming deadlines and investor demands. He hesitated at first, grappling with his own hectic schedule, but urgency brewed deep within him. Memories from his humble beginnings surged as he approached her register. Growing up in a neighborhood where opportunities flickered like distant stars, he intimately understood struggle. When Sarah hesitantly shared her story, financial strain, expensive medical bills, and her son's serious illness, Marcus felt a resonance echo in his chest. Emotions stirred, and he recalled long nights his mother endured, worn down by worrying about bills, keeping hope alive for his future. Still, amidst the connection forming between them, self-doubt gnawed at him. Was he just another well-off corporate failure, underestimating the weight of her reality? The tension felt almost suffocating. It twisted uncomfortably, and he feared that their vastly different backgrounds clouded his perspective. He struggled with the responsibility that came with his privilege. How could he even make a difference? As they continued talking, he couldn't shake off a tightening knot in his stomach. Sarah exuded resilience, yet he sensed her vulnerability, and anguish washed over him. Moments felt raw and significant, but each second pulled at his psyche. What if he failed her? What if their hopeful connection dissolved under the weight of their realities? Before they could lose momentum, Marcus felt an urge rising within him to push past the doubt. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. With newfound determination, he shared his grandfather's legacy of community service, a bridge over unscalable walls toward a collective future forged from tenacity and hope. But with the weight of potential change looming, doubt clawed at him. What if their idea stalled? Could his honest pursuit of justice cost Sarah stability? As they stood before industry titans and city council members, preparing to present their vision for a community outreach program, Marcus could feel the pressure build. Uncertainty loomed like thunderclouds, heightening his focus on the moment at hand. Just as they were about to share their heartfelt plea, an unexpected announcement from the council sent a jolt of tension through the air. The future of their outreach initiative hung in the balance, and Marcus felt a simmering dread creeping over him. Had he just opened a door to a fight that might shatter their nascent aspirations? Would their voices echo unheard within the walls of systemic inequality? Marcus's heart raced as the council's chair began speaking, a monotone drone that cut through his desperate thoughts. Each word felt like gravel underfoot, precarious and laden with doubt. He glanced at Sarah, who stared wide-eyed at the podium. Her vulnerability suddenly wrapped around him like a suffocating blanket. Would their hopes be swept aside, just another footnote in the council's agenda, eclipsed by the well-funded initiatives of established corporations? Taking a deep breath, he refocused. His past churned in his mind, a constant reminder of where he had come from. Years of struggling against a current of societal expectations had forged a fighter in him, and now he needed to channel that fire. But how? He turned to Sarah, whose gaze sought reassurance. "Let's take control of this moment," he whispered, feeling a surge of resolve. He couldn't allow fear to dictate their next move. He needed to be the leader he had always aspired to become, not just in business, but in forging genuine connections where they mattered most. As the council meeting dragged on, he formulated a plan. If they were going to make an impact, he needed to fuel their argument not solely with emotion, but with data, the backbone of any persuasive proposal. He had long discussed the importance of authentic stories paired with hard facts at his company. Now he realized he must practice what he preached. When the moment arrived for their presentation, he stepped forward, voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. He opened with details of the pressing need in their community, citing statistics that highlighted the gap from which Sarah's struggles emerged. The measure of poverty for families with children was staggering in their neighborhood, yet here stood a woman embodying hope. He glanced at Sarah, and what he saw was something more potent than fear. It was determination shining through her eyes. The recognition mirrored his own. They were both here in pursuit of something larger than themselves. After presenting their introductory points, he set aside the formalities and spoke from the heart. He shared the details of their encounter in the grocery store, revealing not only Sarah's challenges, but showcasing her resilience and fierce love for her son. The silence that followed was thick, charged with raw emotion. The chair shifted uncomfortably, glancing at his peers. Marcus noticed a few council members nodding subtly, letting curiosity peek through their facades of indifference. His gut tightened. Maybe, just maybe, this was a crack in the armor of systemic disinterest. But then a hand shot up in opposition. A council member brandishing the legacy of corporate investments and profit, dismissing their heartfelt initiative as impractical. Real change requires capital. This is a charity project, not an economically sound plan, he scoffed. The statement echoed ominously in the room. Marcus's heart sank. Had he already lost them? Was he just a man in a suit doomed to eternal optimism? A flurry of thoughts rattled in his mind, each one battling against the growing sense of failure. But what he didn't know was that born from the pressure to redeem their initiative, he would discover a latent capability within himself. He locked eyes with Sarah, and something shifted. No longer just a CEO navigating his privilege, he felt as if he were standing at the edge of a new frontier, calling deeply on the bond forged by shared vulnerability and ambition. The stakes had been set, yet fear began to thaw into something different: courage. Now, faced with adversity, he had to decide the next course of action. Confront the council member directly, challenging the very basis of his argument? Or pivot back to emphasizing the importance of a shared effort, the kind of collective action that doesn't relent merely because there are obstacles? In the growing tension between vulnerability and bravado, Marcus stood on the precipice of an epiphany. The moment of truth was shaping into a test unlike any he had encountered before. Would he rise, igniting a new path for himself and Sarah? Or would he retreat into the comforts of his established world? With a deep breath, he opened his mouth once more, prepared to reshape the narrative they had begun to weave. "We are not just here to ask for your approval," he declared, "but to redefine what it means to invest in lives." The tough exterior of the council suddenly felt more daunting, each face a wall between him and their vision. The time had come to face the truth that would crystallize his path forward. His next words could either cement this legacy or seal their fate. Would he emerge changed, galvanizing a new sense of purpose? Or would he walk away, haunted by missed opportunity? Marcus felt the weight of expectation pressing down like a thick fog. He had already revealed so much vulnerability, yet his heart raced with the fear of rejection. The council chamber seemed to contract around him, the air thick with an unspoken tension.
As he stood there, the world outside faded into insignificance. This moment was everything. He turned his focus back to the council member, who had just dismissed their proposal with a sneer. The man's arrogance permeated the space.
Marcus understood the systemic barriers that encased initiatives like theirs, but he also recognized his own power, an ember of defiance igniting within him. "No," he said slowly, composing himself, "this isn't just about charity, and it's definitely not a throwaway initiative. We're speaking of real lives, lives that matter just as much as any corporate balance sheet." The reaction was immediate and palpable. Several council members exchanged glances, their attention shifting. He seized the moment. If we don't invest in these lives, we're not just neglecting them. We are perpetuating a cycle of poverty. Is that what we want as a community? His voice grew stronger with each word, each dependent clause serving as a digital pulse for change. The council member shifted uncomfortably, and Marcus pressed on. "Your investments are rooted in profit margins, and while I respect the necessity for fiscal responsibility, I would argue that true prosperity accounts for human potential. Think of the innovation that could arise from uplifting families like Sarah's." He gestured to her, who stood resolutely beside him. "A single initiative can ripple across generations, creating not just consumers but contributors. Imagine a model where we incorporate economic gain with social good, a model that fosters both dignity and opportunity." Doubt flickered in some eyes, maybe even slightly dampening the sparkle of skepticism. This was no longer merely a battle for their project, it was an ideological confrontation. As the chatter subsided, he realized his course must be more strategic. He had started to touch on metrics, but now he had to share a vision, a narrative that transcended data. He paused, letting the profound silence expand, then launched into a wider context of societal responsibility. "Not long ago, I sat where you are," he revealed, an unexpected personal detail slipping from his lips. "I spent years within the walls of corporate boardrooms, driven by numbers and profits, blind to the ramifications of my disconnect. It took time and the relentless voice of someone like Sarah to pull me back to reality." He gestured toward her, allowing the audience to absorb the truth of his journey and the emotional weight of their story. Investing in people isn't just an act of mercy, it's an investment in resilience. Marcus noticed a slight slackening in the stoic expressions around a room. In some corners, he believed he saw empathy creeping into their toughened facades. As he spoke, an intuitive awareness flickered to life. He was not just a CEO anymore, he was a bridge, a conduit between what was expected and what was possible, threading their realities into a single narrative. Yet the council's chair remained aloof, visibly skeptical. The flicker of hope within Marcus dimmed slightly. What if all this effort, the raw strategy, the narrative threaded with personal truth, came to nothing? The potential for frustration loomed. But something morphed inside him. Doubt and hope wrestled, but courage wouldn't allow him to retreat. "I challenge you," Marcus declared, "to rethink what you know. It will take vision and commitment, but just like any sound investment, you may not see immediate returns. Be patient and recognize the transformation that will unfold over time." He knew he needed to close strong, yet a sudden rush of adrenaline surged through him. What will your legacy be? Will it be defined by short-sightedness, or will it embrace a long game of empowerment? I ask you to take a leap with us. Let's not just invest in opportunities, let's invest in humanity. There it was, a rising crescendo of both passion and truth within him. Each declaration resonated with a unified purpose that solidified his identity as a leader determined to create meaningful change. The room fell silent again, an anticipatory pause hanging thick in the air like a taut string.
In that moment, he realized that, regardless of the outcome, he had evolved into someone who believed fervently in the power of connection and truth. But then, an unexpected voice chimed in from the back, a dissenting opinion rapidly gaining momentum. As Marcus turned to grasp this new turn of events, anxiety tightened his chest. This was a test not just of his ideas, but of his convictions. What awaited him in this unpredictable atmosphere of confrontation? Could he respond effectively, or would he falter in the face of adversity? The stakes were higher than ever. The voice from the back interrupted the charged silence like a thunderclap in an already stormy sky. Marcus squinted towards it, trying to discern the speaker amid the tension enveloping the room. He felt a tug of anxiety in his stomach, a wavering between anticipation and dread. The figure was familiar. It was Maria, an old colleague whose skepticism Marcus had always found to be both frustrating and intriguing. "We can't fix societal problems with optimism alone," she declared, her tone incisive, crafted to pierce through his flow. "You want us to gamble on social investments instead of provable returns? Risk is one thing. Throwing money at unproven ideas is quite another." Her words were like arrows aimed straight at the heart of his mission. They sunk deeply, igniting a pulse of frustration and urgency within him. Yet he also recognized a hidden opportunity in her challenge, his moment to reveal not just his knowledge, but the commitment that inspired it. "Maria, I don't deny the risks," he began, his voice steadying as he took a step forward. "But unproven is subjective. The real gamble is maintaining a status quo that has consistently failed to uplift those left behind. The scorecards of corporate metrics can't measure a person's potential." He could see Maria's brow furrow. She wasn't easily swayed. The room buzzed with anticipation as others shifted in their seats, caught in the crossfire of their ideological clash. It struck him then the significance of this exchange. This was not just a defense of their project. It was a crucible revealing the core of his leadership philosophy. "Think of it as investing in a startup," he continued, shaking off the remnants of doubt. "Startups don't thrive by sticking strictly to spreadsheets. They flourish when they embrace their mission and adapt. We're not asking you to ignore returns. We're asking you to redefine what success looks like. It's about sustainable growth, not just the immediate profit." His words started to hang in the air, interrupting the cycle of skepticism. For the first time, he could sense divisions among the council members. Some were nodding, while others wore apprehension on their faces. "But what if this initiative fails?" Maria posed again, her resolve unyielding. "What if we end up wasting precious resources?" "Then we learn," Marcus answered resolutely, the clarity in his voice surprising even him. "Failure does not equate to waste. It equates to insight. Every failed attempt is a stepping stone towards understanding our community's needs better. It's a lesson to inform our future decisions." Recognition of his own growth flickered in his mind. He was no longer that timid figure peering from the shadows of boardroom discussions. He was standing firm, his identity reshaped by the truths he had encountered along the way. Each moment he spent advocating for those marginalized had imbued him with a sincere passion that could not be undone. Yet, as the wave of the room's scrutiny intensified, Marcus realized he had to ground his arguments in something more substantial. He felt the stirrings of an idea, a personal story that could shift the narrative, shedding light on the human dimension of his proposal. "Last week, I met a single mother named Lisa," he began, his voice weaving a narrative thread. "She works at a local grocery store, struggling to make ends meet. In her eyes, I saw not just despair, but relentless hope. She wants a better life for her children, a better life she believes is worth fighting for. And that determination sparked something in me." He paused, allowing the imagery of Lisa's struggle to resonate among the council members. With that pause came the sensations of vulnerability, but also empowerment. This was his truth, and he was laying it bare as proof of the vision he championed. Imagine if our investment in her, and countless others, results not only in economic return, but in transforming lives and breaking barriers. We cannot afford to overlook that potential. With each word, he felt the embers of determination rekindling. His conviction began lifting the spell of uncertainty that had hovered in the air. The room teetered, as if balancing on the precipice of belief. But just as he felt this surge of possibility, another council member rose, eyes blazing with challenge. What additional confrontations lay ahead?
Could he navigate this electric landscape of doubts and objections while solidifying his position as an advocate for change? Marcus felt the air shift once more, the weight of doubt heavy in the room. The council members' intent was clear. They were not finished challenging him. He steeled himself, waiting for the volley of questions that would surely come. "Do you understand how much responsibility rests on our shoulders?" the council member said, his voice dripping with skepticism. "We're not talking about charity. We're running an organization with a budget and stakeholders to satisfy. How can we abandon what's been working just to accommodate emotional stories?" The voice struck him like a cold slap. Marcus's heart raced, a cocktail of indignation and fear brewing within. Was he really willing to put his vision on the line for this? Each question felt like a pebble adding to a scale, tipping it toward despair. "Have you ever thought about why the working hasn't worked for many?" he interjected, understanding the risk of his tone. "Our choices impact real lives. Ignoring their stories won't erase their struggles. It just perpetuates a cycle of oppression that no spreadsheet can account for." Tension crackled as he made eye contact with those who had perched on his side. A few nodded, their expressions shifting from judgment to contemplation. Marcus was acutely aware that a single misstep could send him tumbling back into disbelief, perhaps even erode whatever support he had begun to forge. Maria was silent now, her usual sharpness dissipating. Perhaps she was reconsidering her own biases. This turned out to be a pivotal moment, the very challenge he needed to deepen his resolve and clarify his vision. But beneath the surface outrage, Marcus also felt a pang of vulnerability. What if he couldn't articulate his thoughts effectively? What if he could never bridge the chasm between heart and profit? He took a deep breath and envisioned Lisa's face again, her determination transfixed in his memory. That spark could not be eclipsed by the council's frigid skepticism. "We're not seeking an end to financial accountability," he said. "What I'm advocating for is the union of profitability with purpose. There is no moral division between the two. We can have sustainable returns while also uplifting individuals and families. It's not either or, it's both and." His voice resonated with a conviction he had never fully grasped until this moment. Each word was a step closer to dismantling the walls of binary thinking that plagued their discussions. The murmurs around the room shifted in tone, a blend of murmured agreement and lingering doubts. But then he spotted a new opposing face, a woman with sharp features and arm crossed. "You talk about righteous investment, but what happens when that righteousness fails? How do you respond to a potential backlash from those who depend on our success?" Her question hung heavily in the air, a new set of stakes unfolding before him. Marcus's mind raced. This was a genuine fear, but also a pivotal opportunity to redefine failure in a way that contradicted the council's long-held beliefs. If we invest and it doesn't pan out, we must engage, but we have to learn from those experiences rather than shy away from them. When we confront our shortcomings with transparency, we remain accountable. Failure is part of growth, and if we shelter ourselves from potential backlash, we strip ourselves of the chance to rise, learn, and evolve. He could see the polarizing question affecting a spectrum of emotions, a flicker of concern, then glimmers of understanding. Yet beneath his confidence, seeds of doubt festered. Was he truly changing minds, or simply postponing inevitable dismissal? Will this actually lead us to a better future? He asked himself, silently, the prospect gnawing at him. He had ignited a conversation not only about community investment, but also about vulnerability in leadership, a gamble as risky as any project he'd ever proposed. Suddenly, his mind flooded with new ideas, strategies, and stories he had yet to discover. What if he could show that every failed investment didn't just represent a loss, but a chance for a dialogue about the complexities of human potential? As he leaned into this surge of creativity, he realized he could turn these challenges into a framework for a new proposal, one that wasn't merely about numbers, but encompassed a shared journey toward resilience. But how would the council respond to an even bolder plan? An intoxicating mixture of fear and excitement coursed through him. The time had come to advocate for the kind of transformation he envisioned, but at what cost? Would he risk everything he had built, navigating the storm even further? As Marcus stood there, poised on the brink of a leap into the unknown, he breathed deep, ready to outline his audacious path. But this time, it would come with a far deeper commitment to transparency and accountability. The stakes had never felt higher, and he knew the next step could either shatter or illuminate everything he believed in. Would they follow him into this new landscape, or would he find himself standing alone? Marcus could feel the council's attention weighing on him like a heavy blanket. Each moment of silence heightened the stakes, and he realized that this was more than just a discussion about policy. It was a crucible for his leadership. He cleared his throat, preparing to distill his thoughts into something actionable and inspiring. "We stand at the threshold of possibility," he said, a momentum growing in his chest. "What if we could revamp our entire approach? Instead of just driving profits, what if our success metrics included the stories we hear from those we serve?" The council shifted awkwardly, faces marked with skepticism mingled with intrigue.
This wasn't what they had expected, a mere presentation filled with charts and projections. Still, he saw a flicker of curiosity in a few eyes. Yet, with each breath, an undercurrent of doubt surged within him. Could he really steer this initiative against the tide of entrenched beliefs? As he stood there, the words began to flow. Not just statistics, but an appeal to common humanity. Imagine a scenario where every decision we make is tied back to real people and their stories. I want to propose a shift from conventional metrics to ones that account for emotional impacts and societal change. Maria raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical but listening.
And what if we fall short? What if emotional stories lead us astray?
Marcus felt the weight of those words, an echo of his fears voiced aloud. He had anticipated such skepticism, but didn't have a firm answer, only the knowledge that his commitment to change was genuine. Instead of seeing these risks as failures, we can embrace them as part of our journey. Let our setbacks reveal opportunities. This is how true accountability manifests, learning from our missteps instead of hiding from them, he asserted, feeling stronger as he articulated his vision. His confidence seemed to resonate deeper than he expected. He realized he was not alone in his uncertainty. Doubt was a shared experience in those chairs. It spoke to a vulnerability that connected him with the council members. This was a moment not just of leadership, but of shared humanity. As a quiet feel of empowerment surged through him, Marcus's mind circled back to Lisa. What she had encountered, the resilience she embodied, This was more than abstract ideas. This was about real human life. He remembered the last time they spoke, her eyes filled with dreams, yet softening under the weight of adversity. We need to contribute to people's futures, build partnerships based on trust, and give them a voice to share what they truly need. We may stumble, but we must not let fear stifle our purpose. An animated discussion seemed to flicker in the room. Those who had previously been opposing him began to lean forward, engaging. Intrigued murmurs exchanged amongst members suggested he was breaking through the barriers of skepticism. But the increased energy ignited a sense of urgency within Marcus. He thought ahead, how to refine his proposal, to strengthen the foundation of this newfound direction. Let's establish a pilot initiative where we collaborate with local communities, listening to their insights and ideas. We can bridge the numeric performance with human impact. A wild idea sparked within him. What if this journey could involve real-time feedback and iterative adjustments? Instead of waiting for quarterly reports, why not create open forums where community members shared their experiences? He envisioned a dynamic cycle of engagement where insights informed their decisions in real time.
Will you allow me to prove that we can rally behind growth that encompasses both profit and compassion? He inquired, each word saturated with sincerity. Yet, even as hope began to flutter in the air, there was still a whisper of insecurity. Was he proposing a bold shift, or merely a new facade to an old problem? A voice from the back disrupted his thoughts. What if it's just a nice story but doesn't yield results? In that moment, he felt the full weight of his ambition surface. Could he really find the balance between emotional truths and hard outcomes? The quagmire of possibility loomed ahead, testing the very foundation of his vision. With the council's skepticism hanging in the air like a cloud, Marcus realized he stood at a precipice, not just in his career, but in his understanding of purpose. Would he be able to weave the strands of human stories and corporate accountability into a tapestry of shared success? Or would he falter at the first challenge? As the council pondered his words like a cloud, the path ahead appeared murky, but one truth remained undeniable. This was not merely about leading a proposal, it was an invitation to redefine transformational leadership. The question remained, would they rally together for a new chapter, or would he stand alone, confronting the waves of uncertainty? The council chamber fell silent, as if suspended in anticipation, and Marcus could feel the collective scrutiny digging into him. The latent skepticism palpable, the weight of their doubts pressed harder than before. It was a silence that demanded resolution, yet he was not ready to back down. He scanned the faces before him, each member now caught between the allure of his vision and the anchor of their apprehensions. A younger council member on the far left, whose name escaped him, seemed to be wrestling with something deeper. Marcus had seen that same flicker of internal conflict reflected in himself not so long ago, the throes of doubt intermingled with the pull toward innovation. As the discussion resumed, the young member spoke hesitantly. But what about our investors? How will they react? They expect numbers, not narratives. His voice betrayed a mixture of concern and curiosity, striking a chord with Marcus. "I see your point," he responded, keeping his tone steady but infused with encouraging energy. "Investors want clarity, and we should provide it. But we should also consider how numbers can lie while stories resonate. We must create a narrative that complements our financial goals, a story where success is defined not by cold transactions, but by the warmth of human connection." Right then it struck Marcus, a realization that pressed against the edges of his mind.
Storytelling was not merely a distraction from fiscal accountability, it could be a powerful tool to enhance it. This shift demanded a recalibration of their metrics, redefining value creation where experience and emotional ties intertwine with hard data.
I am not suggesting we abandon our focus on results, he continued, bolstered by his budding conviction. Rather, let's integrate these stories into tangible reporting. We can showcase how our initiatives provide not just profit, but also foster community resilience. We can be pioneers in measuring success through both impact and financial returns. A murmured discussion arose, gathering steam. Marcus could see others leaning in. He recognized the cognitive gears in motion. The room synchronized with a renewed sense of possibility, and it drove him further out of his comfort zone. He began contemplating the specifics of how to operationalize this new direction. What frameworks needed to be developed? How could he mobilize the insights of those who had experienced the effects of their initiatives firsthand? Instead of merely theorizing, a vision of intended transformations bloomed in his mind. Then, the more menacing voice returned. This time, it was from a member who had once been a staunch advocate for traditional metrics. "But it sounds risky, Marcus. What if this risks our credibility?" Marcus's pulse quickened, a familiar knot tightening in his gut. This was the moment where leadership intersected with personal values. He had always been uncomfortable with complacency, yet here he was, teetering on the edge of either transforming the discussion into something meaningful or opting for the safer route, one that might protect his standing but hinder genuine progress. He inhaled deeply, steadying his resolve. True leadership requires recognizing and addressing those risks head-on. Isn't it more damaging to cling to the past than to open ourselves to intelligent experimentation? What happens if we align our journey with the very people who are counting on us? The council shifted once again, and Marcus felt a shift of energy. Could it be that they were beginning to see? He sensed their curiosity burgeon, like fragile seeds breaking through hard soil. But the prospect of doubt remained a specter at his side, whispering memories of previous failures. What if this approach failed as memory dictated? As these thoughts unsettled him, he turned his focus inward, contemplating his evolving sense of purpose and leadership identity. The spectacle of change he was seeking filled him with both exhilaration and trepidation. Then, out of nowhere, the young member with vulnerability in his eyes raised his hand again, filled with a tentative hope. "I think I can find some metrics for measuring community impact in real time," he proposed. Marcus's heart raced, realizing this could be the foundation of something grander than he initially envisioned. Perhaps he wasn't the only one grappling with a desire for a more profound engagement between business and humanity. But even as optimism swelled, a fissure of anxiety remained. He understood that momentum must be crystallized into actionable steps, yet doubts pulsed at the back of his mind. Could they hold on to this potential instead of letting it slip into familiar patterns of inertia? Would they collectively endure the growing pains of transformation, or would doubt lead them back into the shadows of fear and complacency? With the council tentatively leaning towards initiative, he discerned a new path emerging. But it was only the beginning. A blend of fear and excitement coiled tightly within him, pressing forward with an urgency to solidify this fragile inception. As the room buzzed with fresh ideas, he was struck by the depth of this moment, the intersection of individual resolve and collective potential. The next challenge loomed. It was one thing to ignite a conversation. It was another to now ensure its vibrant continuation beyond this room. Marcus's gaze settled on the council once more, and he pondered, would they turn this uncertainty into a shared purpose, transforming fear into a catalyst for true growth and accountability? The decisions they would make next could lead to a critical turning point, one he keenly needed to navigate. And as he sensed the urgency, a question echoed in the depths of his mind. What bold commitment would they make to ensure this newfound understanding had legs to walk on?
The council meeting simmered with a mix of anticipation and trepidation, the air heavy with unspoken possibilities. Marcus's mind was racing, ideas surged like a tide, yet he felt a suffocating weight of responsibility. The moment had shifted, but so too had the stakes. The younger member's suggestion ignited something deep within him, a flicker of potential that demanded nurturing. "Let's start by drafting a framework," he suggested, seeking to harness the energy in the room before it dissipated. "If we're aiming for real-time community impact metrics, we should identify the key performance indicators that align with not only our financial goals, but our ethical commitments as well." The response was slow, as if the profound nature of Marcus's proposition momentarily stunned them. He could see the minds around the table grappling with the duality of ambition and apprehension. It was a pivotal moment, but doubt still clung to the periphery of his vision, a persistent specter lurking in the shadows. Despite his growing resolve, Marcus felt a resonance with the skepticism that echoed around him. Was it hubris to imagine this vision could translate into a functional strategy? He instinctively glanced to the council member who had voiced the initial criticisms, searching for an opening to bolster his position and assuage the fears that had surfaced. "What if we approach this as an experiment?" Marcus proposed, crafting an argument that acknowledged their hesitations. "We can implement a pilot program, test these new metrics in a controlled environment, and analyze the results. If we can't prove that integrating narrative and data adds value, we'll pivot back to our traditional methods." It was a calculated maneuver, he realized, one that stemmed not just from a desire to persuade, but from a genuine intention to foster trust. He could sense that this tactical shift might align with the vested interests of the more cautious members, maintaining credibility amid innovation. Several heads nodded in the room, and the council's collective energy morphed into a genuine exploration of ideas. They began discussing potential community partnerships that could be at the forefront of this new initiative. Each voice that joined the conversation added a dimension of validation, and Marcus found himself both excited and terrified. Emerging from behind the veil of self-doubt required him to lean into a vulnerability he had long avoided. Suddenly, he was struck by a realization. What if we also include feedback loops from those we aim to serve? Engaging them might unveil insights into both the metrics we choose and the narrative we craft. His voice quaked with urgency, a clarion call to action that resonated with genuine intent. He felt the weight of the moment shift again. This was no longer just about him. It was about harnessing the collective intelligence in the room, catalyzing their disparate voices into a singular purpose. Yet as optimism surged, a thread of fear resumed its grip. What if their efforts fell short of expectations, and he bore the burden of failure once more? Steeling himself, Marcus acknowledged this internal tension. He had a choice: to revel in the excitement of ideas taking form, or to succumb to the haunting specter of unfulfilled ambitions from his past. In this juncture, he felt his innate drive to forge ahead. "Let's put together an action plan, assign roles. If we're going to adopt this new analytical framework, we need commitment from everyone," he declared, feeling a surge of leadership rising within him. "If we fail together, but we also discover together." As it turned out, vulnerability yielded strength. By sharing in the responsibility, he had positioned himself not as an isolated innovator, but as part of a larger entity prepared to embrace risks collectively. And here, immersed in the tumult of ideas and doubts, Marcus realized how far he had come from the paralyzed individual who once allowed fear to dictate his choices. The council dove into a flurry of planning, and as he contributed suggestions and encouraged dissenting thoughts, he felt the walls of self-imposed limits erode. However, even amidst this burgeoning transformation, that nagging doubt persisted, probing deeper into his psyche. What if steering this initiative exposed not only the growth of the council, but also the frailties of his own leadership? As discussions intensified, Marcus sensed the impending climax of this chapter. The elemental commitment he sought among them lay just out of reach. Would they unite in this experimental venture, embracing not just the promise of innovation, but also the possibility of exposure?
With excitement pulsing through him, he pondered the next step. Would he have the courage to navigate the inevitable fallout should they falter? And what would that mean for his own journey as a leader? The stakes were rising, and the room vibrated with the tension of untested commitments lying ahead. The exhilaration of the meeting slowly dissipated into the hum of late afternoon fatigue. Marcus left the council room still buzzing from the energy of the discussions, yet a heaviness loomed within him. Despite the shared enthusiasm, he felt shadows lurking, questioning if this endeavor could truly redefine their trajectory. As he wandered through the dimly lit hallways toward his office, uncertainty began to gnaw at the edges of his resolve. What if he had misread the room? What if, in seeking to innovate, he had thrown caution into the wind, exposing not just himself, but the council to potential ridicule and failure? Each step felt heavier than the last, mirroring the collective weight of the council's expectations. Seated at his desk, Marcus stared at the blank computer screen, its quiet void a stark contrast to the lively exchange that had just occurred. He knew he had ignited a spark, yet the flicker of hope was vulnerable. If doubts crept back in and took hold, would he be able to maintain the fragile credibility he had worked so hard to build? He said it was an experiment, he whispered to himself, recalling the pleased glances around the table. Yet where there was encouragement, there was also trepidation, a potent mix that stirred questions he didn't want to confront. Marcus rifled through a stack of papers, searching for something to ground him. Amid the documents, he spotted a report about their last community engagement metrics. Reading through the data, he recoiled slightly. It showcased a stark decline in several areas. The realization hit him. The council had been operating on a foundation of outdated approaches. The very notion of change he had proposed suddenly felt like a leap into an abyss. His phone buzzed, jolting him from his thoughts. It was an email from Ella, a bright intern who had been an enthusiastic supporter of his visions. Her words surged with confidence as she outlined a potential community partnership that aligned perfectly with his recent ideas. As he read, a renewed sense of purpose sparked inside him. This was the very engagement he had envisioned, a collaboration built upon trust and shared insight. With fresh energy, he began typing out a response, but a familiar voice cut through his concentration. "Are you all right?" It was Jonah, his right-hand man, leaning against the doorway, his brow furrowed with concern. Marcus hesitated, unsure if he wanted to lay bare the turmoil swirling inside him. "What if I'm not cut out for this?" he confessed, vulnerability creeping into his voice. "What if this council's faith in our initiative rests on shaky ground?" Jonah stepped closer, an iron resolve emanating from him. "You're leading them through uncharted territory, which is no small feat. However, if you're questioning your vision, then maybe they will too. You've ignited something within all of us. Don't let self-doubt snuff that fire." His words struck a chord, yet Marcus found it challenging to reconcile his fear with an unyielding resolve. "But what if we fail? What if my attempt to lead encourages them to follow a path of uncertainty?" "Failure is part of growth," Jonah countered, straightforward. "What matters is how you respond and what you learn along the way. You have the opportunity to guide this council through it. Imagine the lessons that could emerge from every successful endeavor and every setback." The conversation turned his mind inward, an echoing fear rising to the surface. What if leadership truly was a game of exposure, allowing himself to be seen, flaws and all?
Could he twist his vulnerabilities into a strength that inspired others? Realization dawned upon him. Success lay not solely in the outcome, but in the journey, the lessons learned, the insights gained, and the bond formed through collective risk. The notion of authentic leadership began to resonate. Not just authority, but connection, resilience, and growth amidst the storms of uncertainty. Renewed, he hit send on his draft email to Ella, committing to the exploration of potential partnerships. With each keystroke, he felt a release of the paralyzing grip of doubt. He was no longer merely an innovator, but a leader, willing to embrace the unknown. As he squared his shoulders, preparing to return to the council armed with newfound conviction, he thought today's uncertainty might become the crucible by which his leadership would really be forged. With action as the key, he would navigate this uncharted territory one step at a time. A deep breath shifted him into a more focused mindset. The time had indeed come to face his fears head-on. Would his willingness to bear this journey of transformation inspire those around him to do the same? Or would the walls he was breaking now unveil an even greater challenge that lay waiting in darkness? The subsequent council meeting transformed into a tapestry of innovation and collaboration. Marcus, armed with a new sense of clarity, stood before the council with renewed vigor. His mind raced with possibilities. Each echoed commitment deeper than the last. He had not just gathered support, he had ignited a movement rooted in shared purpose. Today, we aren't merely discussing metrics, we're launching a framework that acknowledges the very heart of our community, he proclaimed, feeling the weight of expectation settle into a shared mission. Discussion erupted, voices intertwining with excitement. As they outlined their pilot program, incorporating real-time feedback loops from community members, the council members began to crystallize expressions of solidarity. The younger member, who had initially expressed doubt, now enthusiastically presented metrics that could translate stories into impactful data. Realizing they were creating something transformative, Marcus felt a deep sense of fulfillment swelling within him. This initiative was not just an outreach program. It was aiming to reshape the narrative surrounding success, defining it through human capital as much as financial returns. Days turned into weeks, and as the pilot program launched, the results began to reveal a blossoming partnership. Community members engaged actively, their insights shaping the very metrics that guided Marcus and the council. Where once he had feared failure, now he cultivated adaptation, a learning curve embedded not only in statistics but also in humanity. Their initial doubts were now replaced by curiosity and a sense of ownership over the initiative. As Marcus monitored the impact of their work, pride surged through him when he first witnessed Sarah, the cashier from the grocery store, sharing her story of hope during community meetings. Her resilience mirrored the journey they had undertaken, encapsulating the solidarity forged in the process. Colleagues began to validate Marcus's leadership with tangible results. Their metrics demonstrated increased community engagement alongside rising satisfaction rates. These were more than statistics. They were success stories woven into the fabric of their initiative. Months passed, and as a milestone was reached, an invitation to present their findings emerged from the mayor's office. It felt surreal. In a room suffused with industry leaders and city legislators, Marcus stood not just as a CEO, but as a spokesperson for profound change. This was the zenith of transformation, a visible testament to his growth. That day, he harnessed the lessons of vulnerability and courage he had embraced. As he shared their journey, weaving data with emotion, he articulated their success not just as a new operational model, but also as a testament to the power of community connection. Enthusiastic nods filled the room, each member hooked not only by the narrative, but also by the genuine human experience underlying the initiative. In the wake of the presentation, personal recognition came swiftly. The mayor acknowledged Marcus in front of an audience of influencers as a leader redefining societal engagement. That moment, laced with applause, crystallized his journey, not as a climb to individual success, but as a collective evolution. Looking back, Marcus understood how far he had come from that hurried CEO finding a moment of clarity in a grocery store. The trajectory from doubt to solid confidence reflected not just in released initiatives, but in the people whose stories became the foundation of their success. His ability to demonstrate competence now reverberated back to him through the eyes of those he had empowered.
As he stepped outside into the crisp air, a profound sense of accomplishment settled in his bones. He had proved to not only himself, but also his council, that challenges could morph into opportunities. Just as he had supported Sarah, the cycle continued, their work now igniting hope in many others. The sun shone brightly over the city, and he smiled. Each street represented a network of potential, and he was now part of its transformation. This journey had, in every way, defined his understanding of leadership. And now it's time for you to reflect on the change you wish to see. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, showing your support. Comment below with your thoughts, reactions, and theories about Marcus's transformation. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. The power of personal overcoming stories is only amplified through your engagement.